Shout out to Joel Embiid for taking home the 2023 NBA MVP, but he shouldn't have played last night. Celtics tied the series in dominant fashion as it heads now to Philadelphia. But today, we're here to rank the top 10 players so far in this year's playoffs. We didn't base off of resume. We didn't base off of regular season. We based our list off of our expectations for the players in the playoffs, individual performance, and a part of team success. That played a part into it for sure. Should be tons of fun. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Bakari Steve. How you doing on this Thursday morning?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Joel Embiid has finally got his MVP. Now he gets to have the sharpest decline in NBA history now that he's certified to make the Hall of Fame.
We're going to have to see. But this is your early reminder to drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Go ahead and follow our socials. Also, if you haven't already, as exclusive content over on there. But without further ado, we got some quick news to cover first. We're then going to get into the top player of the week. And, of course, get into these top 10 players in this year's playoffs. This is the Anomaly Podcast. I'm Owen. Let's get into it. We're going to start here with the pool party. Is it a bad shot? We all know the shot by now. Draymond and Steve Kerr have defended Jordan Poole's late game shot where he shot it from beyond the hash mark as we see on your screen now. Your thoughts on the Jordan Poole shot? If you were a teammate of Jordan Poole, would you be mad at him saying that he was 6 of 10 at that point?
Probably so, just because he's struggled in the playoffs all the way up until this game. And I know he had it going this game, but I mean, he's probably going to be terrible the next 14 playoff games they play. And with 11 seconds left too, I think the thing that a lot of people were thinking is, I mean, it's not like the Lakers have a lot of good free throw shooters. You could get a quick, easy 2, and the ball is probably going to go into Anthony Davis or LeBron James' hands off the inbound. If you can do that, you can get a foul. They're going to miss maybe 1 or 2 shots, and you get another opportunity to come down. And we all know Steve Kerr is capable of drawing up those plays. And at this point in the game, if everybody watched the game, or if anyone didn't watch the game, the Warriors have been down, I think, like 12 points at some point in the fourth quarter, and then like in the last, I want to say 2 minutes of the game, they brought it all the way back to within 2 or 3. Steph Curry really had it going during this stretch of time, and I know he was double coming up the court, and then he passes it to Draymond, who then passes it to Jordan Poole. But I think Steph taking any type of shot, I believe it would have went in regardless on if he was being double teamed, if he was from half court. I mean, we all know that 28-foot line is like a corner 3 for him, so I think Steph could have took that last shot.
Absolutely. I think, especially in this playoff run for the Warriors, I think it's very clear that there's 3 to 4 guys on this team that just have the green light, that can just shoot whenever they want. We know Steph, Clay, Jordan Poole, that's very clear that he has the green light to do whatever offensively, but then maybe Andrew Wiggins can be thrown into that argument. But for this shot here, I'm personally not mad at it. I mean, sure, would you have liked him to take a couple of dribbles up maybe and see if he could still get that shot off 5 feet in front of him? Sure, I think that would have been a higher percentage shot. But if you're 6 of 10, if he has the green light, I can see why nobody's mad at him for shooting that shot, at least within the Warriors organization. But Jordan Poole, I mean, he took the shot. I mean, they're happy with it. I think he should have probably tried to take a couple steps up. That's all for me.
I think they were definitely coding it for the media, especially because this isn't the first time he's done something. I mean, there are plenty of videos out there. Steph got ejected this season for Jordan Poole taking a bad shot, and Steph got mad through his mouthpiece, and Steph got ejected for it. I mean, there's been plenty of other moments just this season alone of Jordan Poole either making a dumb pass or literally, throwing or shooting the game away for the Warriors team. If this was just like a one-time occurrence, I wouldn't be, I guess I wouldn't have questioned it so much. But the fact that Jordan Poole is kind of known for this now, shooting a bad shot or a shot like this, not really having an IQ on the court, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, my question then it goes to, is this a must-win for the Warriors? I had them winning in 5 games, and right now they would have to win 4 straight. This Lakers team has played way better than, I guess, it seems like they just keep getting better and better, is my point. Shout out to Jared Vanderbilt, first off, for guarding Steph Curry. But is this a must-win game for the Warriors in Game 2?
Nah, I don't think it's must-win. Well, I guess...
I'm just saying, with how good of a home team they are, and they dropped Game 1, compared to how bad of a road team they are, at least this season.
And I'm not even factoring that into it. I'm going to actually switch my answer and say it is a must-win because... we all know the type of player We all know the type of resume LeBron James has. He's been there before. He's been there and done it. So has Anthony Davis to this point. Even though that was the bubble, Anthony Davis still has a championship ring. They still have a lot of vets on this team that have, or they still have guys that have been there and done that. D'Angelo Russell may not be his playoff experience, but he's still a vet at this point. They have a lot of guys that know the importance of if they win this game too, they're not going to let it go back to Golden State for a game 5.
I think that stat came out that said LeBron's like 23-2 when his teams win game 1 of the series. So very interesting. We'll have to see if that stat, I guess, gets stronger here as LeBron James continues to amaze us at age 39. But shout out Anthony Davis. This is a question I forgot to ask you on Tuesday, right, as I wanted to ask you this every single round. So very quickly, what is your title matchup as of now? Who is your favorite coming out of the East and West? And I guess who is your favorite to win it all at this point?
Yeah, so I think at the beginning of the playoffs before, any series, I said, I don't know why at that point in time, but I did choose the Celtics, which was obviously the Bucks are still in play. But now it looks even more clear that the Celtics are most likely going to be coming out the East, at least from my perspective. And from the West, I believe I chose Phoenix. But I'd probably say that my Western Conference favorites and my immediate favorites would actually probably be the Nuggets. And I haven't even been quite sold on the Nuggets all year, but they just have a great team, especially for playoff basketball. And if I guess I had to choose, it's like a Nuggets / I like the Lakers. I wasn't a big fan I wasn't a big believer in the Lakers going into the postseason. But when I saw how they played the Memphis Grizzlies, yeah, they got it done in 6 games when they probably should have got it done in 4 or 5. But this is a Lakers team where Anthony Davis didn't have to go crazy scoring. His defense was phenomenal, but LeBron James, they won an overtime game where Anthony Davis had like 10 points and LeBron had 22. This Lakers team, they've been solid on defense all year, and now they have the offense to finally compete. So I like where they're at.
Yeah, I think the Lakers, they're definitely, like I just said, it seems like they're getting better and better each game. I'm gaining more and more confidence in this Lakers team. But at the beginning of the playoffs, I said the Warriors were coming out of the West. I'm going to stick to that, even though right now things don't look so hot for Golden State. But I'm going to stick with Golden State in the West. For my Eastern Conference team, it has to be the Celtics. For the Knicks, they just don't have that star power. It hasn't mattered to this point, but I think, first off, they have to get past Jimmy. But if they get past Jimmy, they got to go face probably the most loaded roster in the league in the Celtics, who probably have 7 or 8 starters on that team. The Celtics, Warriors, we might have a rematch last year here, from my opinion. But I think in that scenario, Celtics might finally get one over the Warriors.
Yeah, the Warriors will definitely, if they do get to the finals, it'll definitely be one of those things where they've been, where they might even burn out by that point. They've had to face a lot of competition. In a potential, if they get to the finals, you could almost kind of book it in that every series they go to is probably going to be 6 or 7 games. So yeah, they'll definitely be battle tested by that point.
Absolutely. We're going to move over to the TAP Player of the Week. I believe it's week 5 or 6 of this week, or to this point with this award, as all guards so far to this point. 2 guards last week, as we had the first ever co-tap Player of the Weeks. Who's this week's Player of the Week?
This week's Player of the Week is Steph Curry. I could have gave it to Nikola Jokic, but Steph's 50-point game was, in the last week, and that was a Game 7. And whenever somebody has 50 in a Game 7. In an away game on a team that struggles on the road, I feel like they just, kind of trump everything that happens beforehand. He by all means, he didn't have the greatest Game 1 in that series either, but he had a really good fourth quarter, into the fourth quarter, kind of brung his team back. I don't know about you, but it really amazes me when I watch Steph. It's like, I know he's going to make some shots that are just like, man. And no matter how good the defense is, I'll be watching the game. And when I want Steph to miss the most, when he has 2 defenders on him, he throws up the shot without even getting a really good jumper off. It always goes in, always. And then next thing you know, he's hit 4 straight threes, and your team's down 25, and the Oracle Arena is going crazy, and you can't do anything about it. Steph really is one of those players that is like, when he retires, as well as like with LeBron, I would definitely be like, wow, they're really gone. So Steph's Player of the Week.
They might retire the same year, as crazy as it sounds. Just with Steph Curry, how much longevity he has with his play style. And we know LeBron's 39. How many total years does he really have left? Probably only 3 or 4, right? At the very most. So Steph Curry, I could see them probably retiring around the same time. But very quickly, before we move into these rankings, is Steph Curry top 10 all time for you? For me, he is. Yeah, and we talked about it a lot on Tuesday, but
he definitely have to be top 10. He's top 10, but as crazy as it sounds, he's not the best. I think he's still second best point guard of all time.
We talked about it on Tuesday. Then we said that he would go to best point guard of all time in your mind, I guess.
Yeah.
If he gets this ring.
Yeah, if he gets this ring. I mean, and it's still kind of hard because Magic kind of set the standard for what a I guess best point guard of all time is, and his career got cut short. And the way he did it, I guess his accolades are still more than Steph, which is crazy. But yeah, if he gets a ring, he'd probably go up to number 1. But he is top 10 player for sure. I mean, obviously, greatest shooter. He has 4 rings, just won his Finals MVP. Yes. And another thing about Steph, I do want to say, I'm not a Steph Curry fanboy. While I'm giving him this praise, so anybody out there who thinks I'm like an avid Steph fan, I'm not. I like his style of play sometimes. But Steph has really done a 360 when it comes to playoff performances because he was known, for the most part as a playoff choker, or not just a playoff choker, but a finals choker. I think last year that finals run he had, especially with him winning Finals MVP, kind of put those accusations to rest, and he's really followed up well this year too.
Yeah, you're just acknowledging the greatness of Stephen Curry, Mr. Wardell. Let's not forget. But moving over to our top 10, we're going to start here with some honorable mentions. For me, personally speaking, I had Jamal Murray. I want to show some love to him. James Harden, who had a good game 1 of the playoffs, a good first half of the game 1 in the first round against Brooklyn. In the rest of the Brooklyn series, he was okay, not the greatest. And then, of course, he had that 45-point masterpiece here in game 1 against the Celtics. So James Harden, Joel Embiid, who, again, shout out to him for winning MVP, but just due to availability in this playoffs, he's only played 3 or 4 games, and he hasn't looked the greatest. He hasn't had that dominant Joel Embiid performance yet, so he just barely missed my list. Another guy, role player love, Derek White. Derek White, for me, is a guy that he just couldn't find a way on this list. If we did top 15, he'd be here, but top 10, I couldn't fathom putting him over a guy like my number 10. But any honorable mentions that I didn't mention here?
I didn't have Jalen Brunson on my list, so honorable mention to Jalen Brunson. He killed the Cavs. But I wanted to show somebody else some love in that spot. It was Jalen Brunson, and I want to say it was Kawhi Leonard.
Oh, Kawhi Leonard.
And Jalen Brown, yeah. But yeah. Kawhi Leonard, he only played 2 games, but he looked great in those 2. He looked like the best player in the playoffs in those 2 games.
Not for top 10 in this playoffs, but Mikal Bridges, another guy I want to show love to as he really spread his wings there in Brooklyn in that playoff series. But my number 10, we're going to start here with the greatest offensive scorer of all time. Not analytics based, but just based off pure talent. Kevin Durant, I expected him to be Kevin Durant in this playoff run, and I think he's underperforming just a little bit. I think at times he's letting Devin Booker take over for the Suns team, which is not a bad way to go. If Kevin Durant's the best ISO scorer in the league, Devin Booker's probably number 2. But Kevin Durant, 6'10", can dribble like a guard. He's gotten so much better defensively throughout his career. And in this playoff run, he's playing good defensively. The Suns team, they don't have enough depth here to keep up with this Nuggets team. And Kevin Durant, he's averaging 28, 8.5, 5, 3 double-doubles, 4-3 record so far in this year's playoffs. He's just going to crack my list here at number 10 as he's too big of a talent. And with those stats, he's still a great playoff performer.
Yeah, and at my number 10, I have somebody, this is a person I chose to put in over Jalen Brunson. I have Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards, he averages a cool 32, 5, and 5 for his, this year in the playoffs, but I believe he averages 31 or almost 32 for his playoff career. Anthony Edwards definitely, I think he's now, even though it's only his second year in the playoffs, I think he's now deserved that he's a player that raises his play in the playoffs. He's really mature for his, for being a younger player in the league. The things, this Timberwolves team by any means was not a team that was supposed to even take a game off the Nuggets. They just don't have what it takes, especially with the injuries and everything. But Anthony Edwards got it done. Not only that, he was a 3 away from gaming game 6 as well, taking 2 games off a Nuggets team that's looked great so far. Anthony Edwards, he looked great in the playoffs this year. He looked great last year. Had they had a competent coach last year, they would have made it to the second round. I feel bad for him because he's in Minnesota with no foreseeable future at hand. I'm praying for you, Ant. Hopefully you get out of Minnesota. But Anthony Edwards is my number 10.
Yeah, shout out Chris Finch, I guess, right? My number 9 is the king, La Almighty, La all-time leading scorer, LeBron James. Okay, LeBron James, he's averaging 22, 11, and 5. The Lakers are 5-2. As I've said a couple times, this team gets better and better throughout the playoffs. It seems like every game, aside from like that one loss when Ja wasn't playing for the Grizzlies, it seems like every game they're getting better and better. I'm becoming more confident that this Lakers team is really going to win this finals. But LeBron James, I mean, the only reason I have him at number 9 and not higher on my list, more so like you, is because for me, LeBron James, we know he has that second gear, and we just haven't seen that second gear yet. I think, right now he's letting Anthony Davis be that number 1. He's letting Anthony Davis, I mean, LeBron's doing basically just enough to get them to the finals. Once it hits that finals, I would bet a house. I would bet everything to my name that LeBron wouldn't let Anthony Davis be the best player. I think LeBron would take that second or even third gear and really show everybody in the world that, in his mind, he's still the best player.
Yeah, at my number 9, I have Kevin Durant for all the reasons you just said. Like you said, it feels like Kevin Durant, it feels like since he's got traded to Phoenix, he's tried to be that system player he was again in Golden State, and Phoenix just doesn't have that same system. They don't have that same culture. They don't have that same anything there. Golden State, they had, a top 2-point guard of all time, a debatable for number 1. You have the best 2 shooters to ever touch a basketball on the team. You have, one of the best defenders of this, of the decade on your team. You had everything going for you in Golden State that they set. They set the culture, and you came in there, you were able to just join it. But in Phoenix, it's been a more so of a it hasn't been an authentic culture. DeAndre Ayton, he didn't even want to be there. The Suns just matched his deal. He just happened to come back. This was a Phoenix Suns team that was on a slide before he got there. Obviously, when you get arguably a top 5 player in the league, you're going to get better. But Chris Paul has made of glass. He's barely there. Devin Booker, like you said, he's the top 2 ISO player in the league, probably top 3. But Kevin Durant is trying too hard to be a system player. He has to be more outside of that in Phoenix, especially with the lack of depth they have. Obviously, it's easy to sit back and watch Devin Booker play, but you have to also match that. I'm saying that like he's not averaging 28, 8.5, and 5. But we all know Kevin Durant also has a second gear that he hasn't reached as well.
Yeah, great points there. But the more we're ranking these, the more I think we've had a lot of questions, at least because with all of our podcasts, we'll talk about always a top 3, top 5 player in the world, top 10 player in the world, top 15. When it comes to after this NBA season, I can promise you guys, if you're listening, that we're going to be doing those lists. We're going to be having top 10 for each position, and we're going to have top 10 players in the league. So those will be a fun 5 weeks there in the summer. But moving over to number 8, you mentioned him as an honorable mention. For me, I didn't want to put him here as a Cavs fan, but I have to show my respects as Jalen Brunson. He's averaging a 25, basically 5-5. The Knicks are 5-2 to this point in the playoffs, as Jalen Brunson and the Knicks just got a much needed win here in Game 2 against the Heat as they head back to Miami. But Jalen Brunson, he's that guy. It's so frustrating because in Game 2 of the Cavs series, we kind of limited him. I'm saying limited as he still had 20, but we found like the formula to beat this Knicks team was just force all of their stars to the right. And they're not as effective as they are going left and going to their sweet spots. But Jalen Brunson, he still had 20 that game. And every single game in this playoffs, I believe he's had 20 plus. I think he just had 30 against the Heat. He's one of those guys that it's frustrating because it's like he doesn't have the skill set or the quickness of the superstars that we see, but he's still getting to his spots and he's still being very efficient in shooting those mid-range shots that Chris Paul loves. It's frustrating watching him, but I'm still going to acknowledge how great he's been in this playoff run.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how Jazz fans felt last year when Rudy Gobert was continuously on the island with Jalen Brunson. Because when you watch him, it's like he's doing the same size up, he's shooting from the same mid-range spot every time. But guys like Chetty Osman can't understand that when they're out there playing defense. So
he's dating JB's daughter.
Gotta be. At my number 8, I have Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum was a little bit lower on my list because he's inconsistent for a superstar in the playoffs. He's been like that pretty much his whole career now. This isn't just a small sample size. He's been like that for a while. Obviously, we all know about his disappearing act in the finals last year. This year, you could tell the Celtics have kind of devoted their season to getting back to where they were last year and proving that last year was a fluke. But Jason Tatum, He's been inconsistent. He had a few inconsistent games in the Hawks series last round. Even last night, even though there was a blowout game and they didn't even need him, he only played 19 minutes. He did shoot 1 of 7. So, the inconsistencies for Jason Tatum are my only worry. That's why he's at number 8. I mean, he's still averaging 26, 10, and 5.5 assists. Their record is 5-3. You could argue they shouldn't have dropped the game to the Atlanta Hawks last round as well, especially that Game 5 where Trae Young games them. They didn't even have DeJounte Murray. So my thing from Jason Tatum that I want to see him moving forward in order to climb up on my list is just more consistency for him. He's the leader of their team. He doesn't really have that like Mamba mentality like a lot of the players around the league do, who will be the leader of their teams. But he's the leader of their team. He needs to get his troops, together so they don't drop important games like that Game 1 versus Philadelphia where James Harden goes for 45 without their best player. So I just want to see a little bit more from Jason Tatum, leadership-wise and consistency-wise moving forward.
Yeah, I think definitely his performance last night dropped him down 1 or 2 spots for me here. I had to go make an edit this morning after how he played last night. But moving over to number 7, we have the same number 7, Swipa, De'Aaron Fox, a guy who put up 38 in Game 1, and it looked like the Warriors weren't ready for this young and fun Kings team. As of the Kings, I mean, this guy was the catalyst to the best offense in NBA history per advanced statistics. This Kings team was fun. I mean, they competed. They took the reigning champs to 7 games. And if De'Aaron Fox doesn't fracture his hand, we might be talking about a Kings-Lakers series here that we'd be watching tonight. But he's still averaging 27.5, 5.5, 8. They were 3-4, so he did have a losing record. But how he played until he fractured his hand was amazing.
Yeah, and you could kind of tell at Game 7, if he had his hand going together, it would have been a different story probably. It kind of looked like, obviously they couldn't throw a ball in the ocean for a little bit of stretch in that game. But that's where De'Aaron Fox usually stepped up, and that's where he usually scored his points in bunches. We all know about the fourth quarter scoring threat that he's been. I have no doubt in my mind that he would have been that in Game 7, and at least it would have been an interesting finish. But yeah, De'Aaron Fox, he's definitely been a lot of players that, basketball fans knew about. Maybe not more so the casuals, but basketball fans knew about De'Aaron Fox. But for the most part, it's always been he's been in a bad situation. He puts up the numbers, but he just doesn't have the recognition. This year, I'm happy for him. The Sabonis trade finally paid off. Even though I do wonder what a prime backcourt of De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton would have been. But I guess we'll have to, have that for a different day.
It's going to be one of the bigger what-ifs, I guess, we have to answer. I'm putting you on the spot here. Do you think this Kings team can repeat this year? Or do you think they can take a leap up? Because I know when that Memphis Grizzlies team was super young, they made that leap all the way to the 2 seed, or it was the 1 or 2 seed, and they were up and coming. Super fun team, and there's tons of questions on if they could repeat that level of play. Of course, now that we know they've been a top 2 or top 3 seed since their first playoff berth there. Or I believe they were an 8 seed there against the Jazz in that first round. It was one of those years when the Jazz won 60 games. Regardless, from that first year, they made that jump from a team that we expected at the bottom to the playoffs. We had questions on if they could get better or maintain that level of play for this Kings team. They went from missing the playoffs for 16 years straight to making that jump to the number 3 seed in the West. Do you think they could be a top 4 seed in the West next year?
I do. The thing about this Kings team that I think a lot of people have, wrong is they're not necessarily. It's not like when that Memphis team was young, Ja was like 19, Ja was 20, Jaren Jackson Jr. was 21. Everybody, they really had. Tyus Jones might have been like 22. They really had a lot of young pups. Which it enabled them. We've seen Ja's ascension to a superstar. We've seen Jaren Jackson Jr. improve his offensive and defensive game.
Deep boy.
Exactly. All-star as well. So we've seen a lot of growth from that Memphis team because they really were young. This Sacramento team, they're younger, but De'Aaron Fox is like 25. Kevin Huerter is like 27. Harrison Barnes is every bit in his 30s. Sabonis is what? I know he's in his mid-20s.
Yeah, I think 28 or so.
Yeah, mid to late 20s. They have a lot of guys that are in their mid to late 20s. Obviously, they can get better. They're all hitting the prime of their career. This isn't one of those situations where they have like a bunch of teenagers and everything coming into the league. They have guys that have been playing in the league for a while that have, hitting their prime. Trey Lyles is old too. He wants to come back. Malik Monk, same thing. He's been in the league for a while. But, this is a unit that plays well together, and Mike Brown is a really good coach for this team. As long as they have Mike Brown and have players that know their roles, play their parts, this team can
I'd have to agree with you. I would say maybe I expect a team or just a player, we'll say, in Luka Doncic to make an appearance back in the playoffs next year. So, I mean, what moves do the Mavericks make? There's some questions of how many moves is Houston going to make this offseason? One team has to drop out. I'm not saying that's Sacramento, but I think they're going to be a 4-5 seed next season. Moving over to number 6, which is the last spot that we have a difference. I'll start here with Jason Tatum, a guy that, like you said, averaged 26, 10, 5.5. The team is 5-3 to this point. And there's been questions. You mentioned the inconsistencies in Jason Tatum's game. I had him at my number 5 spot, but I moved him down one after last night's performance. Sure, it was a blowout. They didn't need him to go out there and drop 30, and they didn't need to go out there and have him be the number 1 guy. But why not? Why couldn't he have been that number 1 guy and led the blowout compared to the supporting cast, right? Sure, some stars need a night off, but in the playoffs, you don't have that. They don't have time to have a night off. Jason Tatum, he got lucky that the team was there and they were playing at a super high level to blow the 76ers team out. But those inconsistencies are why I just can't have him as like a top 5 player in the league yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. What you just said. I think everything from even when he's been young, it's been, he has the talent to be top 5, and we see it when he's like 39. Yeah, exactly. We see him when he has like 39 the other night in Game 1. But he follow up. I mean, it's kind of crazy. You can kind of book it if he has if he has about around 40 points. You can kind of book it. His next game, take the under. Jason Tatum, take the under after he has a huge game. He always, especially in the playoffs, you can even take the under for the next 2 games if you really want to, because it'll take him a second to get back to track. But moving on to my number 6, I have LeBron James. I have LeBron a little bit higher on my list because, his numbers aren't popping out at you like they usually do. He's averaging 22, 11, and 5, 5-2 record. But LeBron James, so far in this playoffs, like you said earlier, he's kind of waiting to hit that second gear. He's playing second fiddle to Anthony Davis. He's even playing third fiddle sometimes to D'Angelo Russell or Austin Reeves or Rui Hachimura or whoever has it going. But I've seen the flash. Like, you watch the game, you see the flashes of the dominant LeBron. There were times last game where the Warriors came all the way back. LeBron took it in his hands to go get a bucket, a tough transition bucket where he just bullies through defenders to get some points on the board, to extend that lead a little bit, to keep the Warriors from going off. When Anthony Davis is out of the game and the Warriors kind of struggle a little bit on offense, I remember he completely bullied Klay in a post. Klay fouled him too. They didn't even call a foul.
They never do.
Yeah, and he bullied him. Gets the left-handed layup right under the hoop. LeBron, we've seen the flashes. Obviously, it's kind of crazy saying you see the flashes in a 39-year-old,
right.
But you see what he's kind of waiting for. And when I see the flashes, the way the team has played, the way he's been able to effortlessly slip into that number 2 position on the team, to Anthony Davis's number 1. I have LeBron at number 6. We're just waiting for him to pop.
LeBron is copying D'Angelo Russell here. As D-Lo, we know his famous tag here is deloading. Loading is in full effect. I think we're just waiting for him to explode. Heavy pause. Moving over into the top 5, where we do have the same exact top 5. And for this player specifically, I think I am the most happy for this player out of anybody in the league, mainly because he's healthy and he's playing at a high level. Anthony Davis, for both of us, is our number 5 guy. A guy who's averaging 22, 15, almost 5 blocks a game. 5-2 record, as we mentioned, for the Lakers. As again, I must say it. I mean, they've continued to get better and better. And for a Lakers team that since the trade deadline has had a top 3 defense in the NBA, it's all because of this man right here, Anthony Davis, a guy who they traded for to take pressure off of LeBron. And we've had questions because over the years, he hasn't really done that consistently. This year, at least in this playoff run, it looks like he's doing that consistently. And I think as long as Anthony Davis can get this Lakers team to the conference finals or the finals, LeBron's going to be able to let AD be that second fiddle yet again. Yeah,
like you said, I'm happy for Anthony Davis. It feels like it's been a long time since we've seen Anthony Davis be this impactful in meaningful games. Even at the beginning of the season when he was healthy, this Lakers defense was really good. They just didn't have the offense to match. Now that they have the offense to match, Anthony Davis is being that what he was when he was a New Orleans Pelicans. He's playing healthy. He's playing really it feels like it's been a while since we've seen Anthony Davis play this dominant of defense too.
Yeah, and he's not settling.
Exactly, he's not settling. Not only is he getting blocks, he's getting defensive rebounds. He just had a 30 and 23 game. I don't know how many people know how crazy that is. He had 30 points, 23 rebounds. Anthony Davis, he's really, I'm just happy for him. Like you said, he's not settling. He's being aggressive. He's playing consistently too. That's another thing. He's had consistency issues, just like Jason Tatum, but he has that consistency now, and it seems like that's the formula to this Lakers' success. Anthony Davis being your number one, everybody else fall in line behind his defensive play, and let him get easy shots in the paint to start the game off. Next thing you know, you're in it, for the rest of the game.
I mean, the only nitpick that I have here with Anthony Davis, if I can talk, is like when you look at his game log, for example. He'll have that 30 and 20 game or 30 and 15 game, and then he'll have 16 and 12.
Yeah.
Which the only inconsistency so far in those playoffs for AD is his point totals. But everything else, he's being aggressive. He's still bringing that defense, and the Lakers are, I think, the second best defense in the NBA or in the playoffs so far. Aside from the Knicks, who only play 1980s basketball. But so happy for AD. So happy. But moving over to number 4, we have arguably, not arguably, one of the most talented offensive guys in the NBA, Devin Booker. There is no Kendall Jenner curse. There is no Kardashian curse here with the number 1 there in Phoenix, as he's averaging 35, 5, 6.5, and the Suns team is currently at a 4-3 record. Look, right now they're in a dark place and in a deep hole there in Denver as they're down 2-0 to the number 1 seed in the NBA playoffs left as the Milwaukee Bucks are out. But the Denver Nuggets, they've looked amazing. Devin Booker and Kevin Durant are the only reason this team is afloat, especially Devin Booker, though. He was Player of the Week last week, as you mentioned. He's had 3 or 4 40-point games so far in this playoffs, a couple 30s there to pair along with it. Really being the offense for Phoenix.
Yeah, I agree with you. I originally had Anthony Davis 4, Devin Booker 5, but then I just thought about it. I was like, Devin Booker is the sole reason and that Phoenix got out of the first round in 5 games. All of those games are competitive. If Devin Booker doesn't close out those games, the Clippers, might win in 5. As crazy as it sounds, that's how good the Clippers were playing compared to, especially with their depth compared to the Phoenix Suns. And like we said earlier, we're kind of waiting for Kevin Durant to kind of pop out of that system, and kind of be that aggressive Kevin Durant scoring wise. But Devin Booker has really carried the load. He's been right there, with the program. Picking up any slack. Like you said, him and Kevin Durant are the sole reason that the Phoenix Suns are relevant. I was mad when Kevin Durant got traded to Phoenix because I knew that they were on a decline. Obviously, we know that they went to the finals on a medical run. 2 years ago? Where they
got very lucky.
Exactly, they beat an injured Los Angeles Lakers team. They beat a injured Denver Nuggets team, and then an injured Los Angeles Clippers team. And they couldn't get the job done against Milwaukee, who probably shouldn't have been there if it wasn't for injuries too. But, Devin Booker has been playing really good this postseason. Unfortunately, I don't think that'll be enough to beat this Nuggets team. But
yeah, you can only imagine his level of play, and I guess point totals shoot up as Chris Paul is now out, and Devin Booker, maybe not his point totals, but just his overall play goes up as we didn't think that was possible, but Chris Paul is now out. They're going to need a guy to run the show.
Which they don't have.
And half the game is going to be Devin Booker bringing the ball up. Half the game is going to be Kevin Durant bringing the ball up. As at all times, one of those guys are going to be on the court against Denver. And that's the only reason that people still hold out a little bit of hope for this Suns team in the playoffs. But moving over to maybe the MVP of the league, right? A guy who was second this year, but Nikola Jokic. I mean, a guy that is averaging 28 and 15. He's had two triple doubles. This Nuggets team has the best record, I believe, in the playoffs here at 6-1. They're the number 1 seed. They're playing like it, and Jokic is the catalyst of this Denver Nuggets offense. Offensively, defensively, he's been surprisingly good here in this postseason. He's not getting picked on as much as he has years past, and Nikola Jokic is playing like the MVP that we know he can be.
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't a believer in this Nuggets team, but I guess I didn't take into consideration how playoff basketball is played, and you're going to need to rely on your bench when your starters are out of the game. They have that. They have the star power. Jamal Murray has looked great, but Nikola Jokic has looked really good. Like you said, he could definitely could have won MVP and nobody would have said anything either. This Nuggets team has looked really good because of Nikola Jokic. He's been dominant. He's taken DeAndre Ayton's lunch money. It'd be very interesting to see an Anthony Davis Nikola Jokic matchup. It feels like we haven't seen Nikola Jokic go up against a good defender at a good big defender yet. As crazy as it sounds, I mean Rudy Gobert, but I could score 15 on Rudy Gobert for $100. It'd be interesting to see Anthony Davis on Nikola Jokic because we know Anthony Davis, when he's locked in, he's a top 3 defender in the league.
For Rudy Gobert, just touching on that very quickly, it's Rudy Gobert. We know he probably, based off his resumes, might be a Hall of Famer. As crazy as that sounds, but in the NBA, they let anybody in the Hall of Fame. But Rudy Gobert, being the 2 or 3 time defensive player that he is, he's never, ever been able to at least limit Jokic. Jokic has always exposed him throughout the years, and he did that in the first round yet again. But, at one point, he said DeAndre Ayton was his toughest defensive matchup.
That was probably when DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker were still getting Kobe and Shaq comparisons.
DeAndre Ayton was never going to be Shaq. I never understood that, right? But anyway, Nikola Jokic, he's the Joker. If you guys want to watch this guy arguably is the greatest playmaker we've ever seen, at least just passing the ball, with how he manipulates the defense and finds open guys and passes way too early, where he's like leading his guys to the right spots. It's really fun to watch. And the only thing that sucks for us East Coast fans is those games don't start until 2 in the morning, basically. But moving over to number 2, Mr. Wardell, Stephen Curry, a guy that you talked about it. He now has the most points in a Game 7 in NBA history out of that great series against the Kings. Steph Curry took over in Game 4, and he was, rightfully so, we talked about it, our top player of the week. But a guy that's averaging 30, a guy that was the only reason this team made it out the first round, and he's the only reason this team has hope to continue their playoff run in their last dance there with that Curry, Clay, and Dre core. Just quick thoughts on Steph Curry. I wanted to have Jokic here, but then it was really that Game 7 in my mind that put him over Jokic for the number 2 spot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because, like I said, most of the time, at least up until this point, at least until last year, Steph Curry, he didn't really perform well or consistent in the playoffs. He would have some games, usually versus the Houston Rockets, where he'd go crazy and have like 40 points, and then he'd just drop off the planet of Earth, and usually Klay Thompson would close out those Game 6s. I remember the Oklahoma City Thunder series where they went down 3-1. It really wasn't Steph that brought him back. It was Klay Thompson. So Steph, he's really flipped the switch, especially since Kevin Durant left. He had to when Steph was out, when Klay Thompson was out and it was just Steph. I feel like that's what kind of taught Steph to kind of have that more of a killer instinct and kind of be more of the man. As crazy as it sounds, because he is a 2-time MVP, a unanimous MVP,
the only unanimous MVP.
Exactly, a Finals MVP. He has 4 rings, but it feel like he didn't really have that killer instinct. Obviously, if he did, they would have been able to get the job done in 2016. They wouldn't have needed Kevin Durant. They needed Kevin Durant to come and kind of be
Put
that
Slim
over, Reaper. But Steph learned a lot from that time. He's learned how to put the dagger in the team's heart. As crazy as it sounds, I'm happy for Steph. I'm happy that he's playing well. Unfortunately, I don't think he'll win this. He'll win this series versus the Lakers. But I am happy for Steph that he's playing well. He kind of seems rejuvenated since he's had those kind of later career injuries, especially going back to that broken hand this season. He's been injury riddled, but it seems like every time he's out there, he's out there to make greatness happen.
Yeah, the greatest shooter of all time. We talked about it on Tuesday. He's already cemented, and at least in our eyes, as a top 10 player of all time. A ring only puts him into the top 3, top 5 category here. In a way, it sounds crazy to say this as he just won a championship and everybody, sees him as the best shooter of all time. It still feels like, he's underrated for, I guess, what he does for that Warriors team. Because unlike any other year, he's not getting those Clay games. He's not getting those. Jordan Poole hasn't had a game yet. Not that we're expecting it from Andrew Wiggins, but we just haven't had one of those role players like we have for the Warriors step up and be that guy that Steph can have 20 points in this team, cruise to a win. Steph needs 30 a night. He needs to have 30 a night, and he's going to have to make some ridiculous shots every single night. I don't think now that I'm looking at it, I don't know if they can beat this Lakers team, but if they do, I think they're finals bound, and Steph Curry is going to be on his way to top 5 of all time potential.
And as crazy as it sounds, too, when you really think about his career, the way it's played out, Steph entered the league in 2009. He didn't make his first All-Star game till 2014.
Yes.
So 5 years later, he didn't win MVP till 2015. That's when he got his first ring. That's when a lot of people knew who Steph Curry was. That year they won that first ring when he was the babyface assassin. That's 6 and 7 years into his career. Since then, so you really take since 2014, 2015.
Not even 10 years.
Exactly. Not even 10 years. He's cemented himself as a top 10 player of all time. He's completely done his career at 360. He's changed the game. He's become the best. He's made the most threes in NBA history. He's his best shooter ever. And that's just like I said, that's the last 10 years.
It's crazy when you think about it and when you put it into that perspective.
Yeah.
But moving over to number 1, probably not a surprise to most people. Jimmy Butler, Hemi Butler, whatever you want to call him, a guy that is 5-1 in this playoff run, took down the number 1 seed here in the playoffs. A lot of guys' titles favorites here, especially mine here in the Milwaukee Bucks. A guy that took them out in 5, and he, on one ankle, took out the defensive-minded team, the gritty team in the New York Knicks. It took him down in game 1, right? So he's 5-1. The team is 5-2. But Jimmy Butler, a guy that's averaging 35.5, he's doing quite literally everything for the Miami Heat. He's playing that Superman role that we know that this playoff Jimmy, I guess that coincides with it, that he is Superman. Right now, I mean, he's going to be back. The next game they play is on Saturday, so he's going to have plenty of time to rest. And didn't they say that it's not as serious as it looked? It's not as serious as we think, the injury. So that's always good to hear. Not for Knicks fans, but that's always good to hear for the average fan, as Jimmy Butler is so exciting to watch in the playoffs. And, he gets so much hate in the regular season for how it seems like he just coasts and doesn't really care, and he's okay with just being a 4, 5, 6 seed. But when that playoffs start, it really seems like he takes that switch and he flicks it on to the highest level. And it's like, even in that play-in game against the Hawks, he kind of disappeared. And it was like, is playoff Jimmy really a thing? Once that playoff series against the Bucks started, he shut us all up really quick.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't even remember. I don't remember him doing it in Chicago. I don't remember him doing it in Philly. He had 3 other great players around him. I don't remember him doing it in Minnesota, but nobody can in Minnesota. It's really just been, and I remember when he signed that max contract with the Heat, everybody was like, "Why are you signing a 30-year-old to a 4-year max deal?" Or 30. I think he might have even been 31 at that point.
Yeah, I think he'll be 36 when he's making $50 million. I'll look it up.
I mean, everybody was like, "You don't give somebody who's probably past their prime that much money." And Jimmy he's shut all those rumors up. I mean, since then they've been to a finals. Obviously, they've been to an Eastern Conference Finals. And they haven't even had the best teams around them. They've tried to get some pieces around there with Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo. He doesn't. He's very inconsistent. Talk about consistency issues. That is Bam Adebayo's face on that issue right there. But Jimmy's played great every playoffs he's been in as part of the Heat, cementing himself in Heat legacy. His career, when you think about it as well, is another crazy career because he was second fiddle in Chicago all those years when Derrick Rose was there.
Maybe third fiddle.
Exactly, maybe even third fiddle. They shipped Derrick Rose out. Jimmy Butler becomes most improved player. He becomes an all-star. Even then, I couldn't see it then because I'm like, it was more like a Mikal Bridges ascension this year at that point in time for Jimmy Butler. Then next thing you know, he just kept getting better and better and better. And here we are now talking about him being the best player in the playoffs. His team is probably a bottom tier team if he's not on there. They're competing for a top 3 pick every year if he's not on the team. So shout out Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, his story is incredible. I could see a movie being made about it. As when he was little, his mom abandoned him. He was homeless, and then he was taken in by another family. He's had to work for everything. I mean, he wasn't
went to JUCO, Marquette.
He went to JUCO, Marquette. He wasn't even a starter at Marquette for a lot of that year. And then, boom, he gets drafted on a flyer by the Chicago Bulls. They, like you talked about, he really, throughout his entire career, he's only progressed. And it's really amazing to watch. And for a guy that was once abandoned, he's now, in 2025, 2026, he'll be making $52 million in that season. at age like 36 or 37. So shout out to Jimmy Butler. His story's amazing. This season alone, or in this playoff run, it's one of the most historic playoff runs we've seen. It's up there with that 2020 bubble run from Jimmy Butler, as that team was a bit more complete. Not a bit more, but a lot more complete. But Jimmy Butler now, I mean, still doing it. Still doing it, 33, number one player in the playoffs, took down Giannis. There's not enough you could say about Jimmy Butler here in this playoff run. But we're just going to recap here. We're going to recap here as we'll go through our 10 through 6s, as we still have the same top 5. But my 10 through 6 goes as follows. We have Kevin Durant. We have LeBron James, Jalen Brunson, De'Aaron Fox, and Jason Tatum. And what is your 10 through 6?
My 10 through 6 is Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, De'Aaron Fox, and LeBron James.
Our top 5 is Anthony Davis, who it seems like it's a crime that he's that low, but we've had a lot of great playoff performers this season. Devin Booker at number 4, Nikola Jokic, Steph Curry, and as we just talked about, Jimmy Butler is number 1 for this season. So that's our top 10s for our playoff performers this season. A great idea. You brought it to the show. Great idea here, as that was a kind of fun to put together. But any last thoughts before we get out of here? As that's pretty much going to do it for today's show.
Yeah, like you just said, there's been a lot of great performers in this year's playoffs, and we have some stars missing. I mean, we have Luka, Kyrie. I'm trying to think. Shea didn't even make the playoffs.
Really? Kawhi, Paul George?
Exactly. Kawhi, Paul George, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine.
Carmelo Anthony.
I mean, we have a lot of guys that haven't made the playoffs this year. Toronto didn't make the playoffs. They usually, play that. They play grittier than the Knicks, even though they're always out in 4 to 5 games. It's been a really good playoffs this year. Not the playoffs I don't think anybody was expecting, at least in the Eastern Conference top half of the bracket. But, we get LeBron, Steph, second round. We get, Kevin Durant, Jokic, second round. We're getting, a classic series, a classic Boston win series, and Philly versus Boston. We're getting some really good playoff matches around the league.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think it's only going to get better here as the playoffs go on, especially in that Western Conference, as there's plenty of possible matchups we could see there. But that's going to do it for today's show. Again, check out our IG, our Instagram. Check out our TikTok, as we're going to have exclusive content there. We're going to have 2 posts today alone. So go ahead and support us over there, right? And really, I mean, that's it. We'll see you guys next Tuesday with, I'm sure, some of the latest and greatest sports news. I'm Owen. He's Bakari. Until Tuesday. Have a great weekend. We're out.